Hello, boys and girls. I hope you are well. My name is Mr. Lombardi. I'm the superintendent, and I am your mystery reader this evening. I will be with you for the stupendously spectacular Spelling Bee, chapters 11 and 12. If you have not done so already, please open up your book to page 75, and we will begin with chapter 11. Inside the town hall, the atmosphere was even more tense than the first round in Dunedin. The Wimples were directed to the front of the room near the stage, past TV cameras and broods of anxious parents fussing over kids and squeezing in some last-minute spelling drills. Victorious, triumphant, celebratory. Should I be practicing with you too? Dad asked. India shrank away from the barrage of words. Just being with me helps more than anything. She was jostled out of the way by a tall boy with straggly bangs and a rather unpleasant voice. Of course I'm going to win. Why wouldn't I? The pack of losers won't know what hit them. But Marvin, you shouldn't. His parents mumbled an apology to India and scurried after him. There was another boy who shivered under his father's looming figure. Of course you want to be here, son. You love spelling. A tall, pencil-thin woman in a pantsuit and high heels was brushing a young girl's hair into two tight ponytails. Mommy loves you. You know that. And if you win this round, I will buy you that bike you've always wanted. Wouldn't that be great? Nana Flo didn't like what was going on at all. She charged up to the woman and tapped her on the shoulder. Excuse me, but wouldn't it be great if you got a bike instead? Nana tried to look imposing, which was hard when she still had mud stuck to her clothes and face. The woman straightened up so that she towered over Nana Flo. What did you say? Her voice was steely and quiet and gave India the feeling of a wolf about to pounce. But Nana Flo wasn't intimidated and was just about to let fly when Dad stepped between them. She was just saying how good it would be to have a bike, to stay healthy. We could all do more of that. Isn't that right, Nana? No, I wasn't. Luckily, at that very moment, they were interrupted by a bird-like woman on stage wearing a canary yellow dress. She looked like she was about to burst into song. Ladies and gentlemen, she chirped, I am Miss Posey, today's pronouncer. Please take your seats. We are about to begin. Parents scrambled, some giving final hugs and advice, others pointing fingers and delivering stern warnings. How do you feel, Dad asked. India's stomach plummeted at the idea of her family having to sit far from her. Good, she fibbed. Have you got your lucky hanky? Nana Flo asked. India pulled it from her pocket. Right here. Not that you need it, Nana said. You're as smart as a whip. Good luck hug? Boo held out his arms. Yes, please. As Boo squeezed her tight, he whispered, You'll be great, sis. I know it. The Wimples moved into the audience while India took her place beside the other kids. The boy with the straggly bangs sat beside her. He flicked his hair aside, sniffed, and wrinkled his nose at India. Did you forget to have a shower this morning? A few of the kids overheard and began elbowing others down the line until everyone was staring. I did have one, but our van broke down and... The boy sniffed again and scooted his chair away. India's skin felt like it was on fire, creeping up from her toes and into her cheeks. Miss Posey explained the rules, but India heard none of them. Instead, she tried to discreetly pick off the mud that stuck to her clothes, but this only seemed to make things worse. Her throat tightened, her breathing grew quicker. And the voice inside her head came back. You're a mess. You should leave. How did you ever think you belonged here? India snuck a peek at the kids beside her. They should be here, not smelly, muddy you. India looked into the crowd, desperately trying to find her family. She searched each row frantically. Finally, she saw their beaming faces. Dad gave a small wave, and with that, something jolted inside her. He looked so proud and happy to have his daughter on stage. India sat taller and waved back. She ignored the boy with the straggly bangs, as well as the voice in her head, and decided she was staying right where she was. Mrs. Posey turned to the contestants. At this very moment, children like you from all over the country are hoping to win the next round and become one of the top 8 to go through the finals. Which will be me, the boy beside India boasted. So let's find out who those lucky children will be. One by one, each child was called. Some stumbled to the microphone, others skipped. Words were pronounced and definitions read. And after Miss Posey judged each spelling, there were shouts and yelps, but also tears and tantrums. Pesky, vexatious, troublesome. Marvin, the young boy sitting beside India, was next. He swaggered across the stage, gripped the microphone, and said, "Ready when you are." "Your word is presumptuous." Miss Posey said, "This is an adjective meaning overconfident, arrogant, or cocky." India immediately spelled it in her head. Marvin paused and smiled, a gleaming pop star smile, confident that he knew the word, but also enjoying the attention of being on stage. "Could I have the language of origin, please?" he asked, drawing out his time in the spotlight. "Middle English, Old French, and Late Latin." "Thank you." He flicked his bangs and began. "Presumptuous. Presumptuous. Presumptuous. He smiled into the camera and waited for the applause. "Oh dear," Miss Posey said. "I'm afraid that is incorrect." Marvin's smile nosedived. "What?" "Your answer is not right." Marvin did not budge. "It has to be right." Miss Posey shook her head. "I'm sorry, but it isn't, and you're going to have to leave the stage." When Marvin crossed his arms and refused to move, Miss Posey searched the audience. "Are Marvin's mom and dad here?" His parents climbed sheepishly onto the stage and muttered a few words to their son, who clung to the microphone stand and cried out, "No! I demand another word!" His dad laughed nervously. "We need to leave now, son." "But it's not fair," Marvin wailed. "I'm better than all these other losers." There were gasps from the audience. Marvin's parents had no choice but to pry his fingers from the stand and carry him from the stage. He tried to pull himself from their grasp. "Let me go! There's been a mistake!" They dragged him down the aisle to the exit, where he gripped the door frame and kept yelling until 2 security guards helped his parents haul him out of the room. "I should have been the winner!" His voice faded as the doors slammed behind him. There was an awkward silence before Miss Posey regained her composure. And with a renewed smile, she called the next contestant, India Wimple. India's legs trembled. She carefully stood, hoping they wouldn't buckle, and tiptoed slowly to the microphone. The voice inside her head sounded loud and clear. Marvin thought he could win and was thrown out on his first word. "So what chance do you have? What makes you think a mud-caked girl from Yungabilla could even think about winning?" India headed to the microphone, and with each step she felt completely and utterly inconsequential. India wasn't sure if it was Miss Posey who had spoken or the voice in her head until Miss Posey continued. "This is an adjective meaning of little or no importance, insignificant." India sighed. It was exactly how she felt. She wished she could just disappear. "India?" Miss Posey asked. "Would you like me to repeat the word?" "No, thank you." India scribbled on her hand. Inconsequential. She began. I-N-C. She scribbled again. O-N-S-E-Q-U-E-N-T-I-A-L. Inconsequential. "That is," Miss Posey looked up from her notes. "Correct." India heard her family cheer wildly from the back of the room as the voice followed her all the way back to her chair. Next time, you might not be so lucky. The next boy looked as if he'd been dropped from a plane without a parachute. India recognized him from the lobby. He was the one whose father loomed over him. When he was given his word, he stared directly into the audience, wide-eyed and frozen. Which is exactly when the pronouncer noticed something unusual. A man in the third row was silently mouthing the letters. Miss Posey nodded at the two security guards, who quickly swooped in and escorted the man away. "What are you doing?" The man's words rang with indignation. "I've done nothing wrong. Unhand me. My son is destined for greatness." The boy ran after his father. "Dad!" When they were gone, the competition continued. Skullduggery, charlatan, manipulator. Each time it was India's turn, she would write the word on her palm before carefully spelling it. Industrious, steadfast, dedicated. India peeked at the sprinkling of children remaining. Only 9 left. They were all staring at Miss Posey, listening to the final words that would decide the top 8. All of them, except for an Indian boy at the end of the row, who was staring at India and smiling, as if they knew each other. Then he waved. India panicked. She thought about waving back, but what if he was waving to someone behind her? What if he thought she was someone he knew when she wasn't? What if he showed, or at least she thought she wasn't. Maybe they did know each other, but she'd forgotten. She turned away and hoped he'd think she hadn't seen him. The air was charged with tension. Kids spelled the final words as carefully as they could, knowing one slip could send them home. A young girl took her place at the microphone. She nervously twirled the end of her braid, waiting for Miss Posey to begin. "Your word, Lily, is outrageous." India instantly spelled it in her head. The audience waited, holding its breath. No one made a sound. Lily began. O-U-T. She took a deep breath. R-A-G. She paused before deciding on the last few letters. O-U-S. She looked up hopefully. "Oh no," India whispered. "That is," Miss Posey said, "incorrect." The audience gasped. "You have spelled brilliantly, but sadly, it's time to say goodbye." Lily's lip quivered momentarily. She whispered a small thank you and left the stage. Miss Posey invited the 8 remaining kids to stand up. "Ladies and gentlemen, will you please congratulate our Spelling Bee finalists?" The audience rose to their feet and applauded, except for some not-so-polite parents of kids who hadn't won, who were busy crying or mumbling how the competition must have been rigged. You have all competed valiantly and made it through to the finals." Miss Posey paused, saving the best part till last, the part India never thought she'd hear. "Which means you will all be traveling to Sydney." The audience cheered and lights flashed. India felt a wave of excitement, followed quickly by a wave of wanting to be sick. Her legs felt weak again, and she was about to fall over when Dad rushed onto the stage and lifted her into a hug. "You did it." Boo squeezed between them. "I knew you would." "Never doubted it for a second," Nana Flo added. "Me too," Mom agreed as they all bundled together in one giant Wimple family hug. The boy who smiled at her earlier was also being smothered in kisses and hugs from his mom and dad. "My son, my wonderful son," his father repeated over and over. Between the chaos of hugs and kisses, India noticed the boy was smiling at her. Again. This time she smiled back, or at least tried to. She was worried it came out more like a snarl. She really had to practice, but she didn't worry about it for long because Dad interrupted with a proud declaration. "My little girl is going to Sydney." Even as Dad announced it, he and India weren't sure they believed it, until he said with more conviction, The Wimples are going to Sydney. Boys and girls, that concludes chapter 11. We are now going to move to chapter 12. India's life became a whirlwind of school and spelling. She even dreamed words in her sleep. Pronunciation, alliteration, orthography. India. Then she started hearing Dad's voice in her sleep. India. It felt real, as if he was there, whispering her name. India. She opened her eyes, realizing it really was her dad's voice, and it was coming from down the hall. She snuck out of bed and tiptoed to her parents' bedroom door, which was open just a crack. We owe it to India, Dad said. We'll think of something, Mom whispered. We always do. It's a lot of money, Dad whispered back. Maybe we don't all need to go. We have to. For a second, Dad forgot to whisper. I promised India that the whole family would be with her. There was a long pause before he said, I went to the bank today to see if they'd give me a loan, but they turned me down. The manager said I didn't earn enough and the bank thought it'd be too risky. I could have lied and told him I had a few big jobs coming up, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Are you disappointed with me? Why would you say that? Because I'm a journalist who unblocks toilets and clears leaves from gutters, and even then I sometimes get paid in homemade jam or hand-knitted sweaters. Arnold Wimple, Mom sounded angry now. India moved closer. I never married you because I thought we'd be wealthy. I married you because you're the kindest, most considerate man I have ever met. Not only that, but you are also the handiest. If I had known that, I would have married you sooner. I want to give you so much more. Dad's voice was small. A bigger house, new clothes, a vacation every now and then. Why would I want all that? As long as I have you, the kids, and Nana Flo, I have everything I need. India crept back to her room and snuck into bed. Over the last few weeks, she'd felt herself become less frightened, and she met people she didn't know. The sick feeling she had whenever she felt nervous also seemed to disappear, which she only realized now because that sick feeling was back. Dad felt awful, less than a dad, and it was all her fault. India wished she had never entered the stupendously spectacular spelling bee. Then Dad wouldn't be worrying, and she wouldn't be awake worrying about Dad worrying. She wished she could go back to Friday nights in front of the TV, silently mouthing the answers, with Boo beside her and Dad, Mom, and Nana Flo on the couch, not worrying about a thing. India lay awake, wondering what to do. There must be some way she could help out. She tried to think about what ingenious India would do. She was able to get out of trouble with her brilliant plans and exceptional thinking. Yes, but you're nothing like her, the voice inside her head was back. She's way more daring and clever than you'll ever be. India sighed. It's true, she thought. I'm not ingenious India, who fights felon and fends off foes. I'm just plain old India Wimple. She curled into a ball and rolled toward the window, which was when she noticed something peculiar. Silhouetted against the street lights, a hunched figure tiptoed silently through the night, directly in front of her window. India clenched her teeth. She was furious. Dad worked too hard for what little they had for someone to walk into their yard and steal from them. If it was a robber, she was going to let him know what a big mistake he'd made to pick their home. She threw off her blankets and scooped up the heavy dictionary from her bedside table. She crept along the hall and into the living room, careful not to wake Boo. She slowly turned the handle of the door and gently pulled it open. There he was, the robber, sitting on her front steps. He was crouched over and looked like he was counting something. Money he had stolen from the Wimples, probably. India lifted the dictionary high above her head, and just as she was about to bring it down, a car drove down the street, its headlights spilling over the robber, clearly revealing his face. Dad? Dad turned to see India holding the dictionary. India? What are you doing here? She asked, hoping not to get clobbered by that book. The car passed by and left them both in the dim glow of the streetlight. Oh, she lowered the dictionary. Sorry, I thought you were a robber. They'd be out of luck if they tried to rob us, Dad laughed. But there was such a note of sadness in that India wanted to clobber something, anything. She sat beside him and noticed that it wasn't money he was holding, but small pieces of paper. What are they? Dad's worry deepened. They are IOUs from jobs I've done. People have been paying in IOUs? Not everyone, and it's only while the town's having a rough time. They'll pay me when things pick up. He brightened. I'll find a way to pay for everything. Don't you worry. India knew there was no other way, and it wasn't fair that her family had to find money for a competition she might not even win. So she said the only thing she could think of. I want to drop out of the spelling bee. What? Dad straightened. I'll find the money. I promise. It's not the money. India looked away, trying to hide the lie. I think the stress of the competition might not be good for me. It might even be causing permanent psychological damage. Dad raised an eyebrow. Permanent psychological damage? The way he said it made it seem a little ridiculous. Yes, India tried to sound convincing. Who knows how I might be affected when I'm older? Dad fixed her with the look of a detective. Do you really want to drop out? Yes. Like Dad, India was a terrible liar, and Dad knew it. When you were on stage spelling all those words, did you enjoy yourself? India shook her head and was about to say no when he asked, just a little? India slumped. Yes, but it's not fair to spend money on this. What else are we going to spend it on? India scowled. How about food or the bills on the fridge? And miss this chance? Not on your life. Dad pulled her closer. We'll manage, I promise. And don't you worry about anything. That's my job as your dad. India nestled into his hug. Moths flapped in the glimmer of the streetlight. Have I ever told you how we gave you your name? Dad asked. About 1,000,000 times, India smiled. But tell me again. After college, I bought a backpack and went to India, hoping to find something incredible. And I did. I met your mom on a beach in Goa. She was the most beautiful woman in the most beautiful place. And when we got married, we wanted to name our first child after the country that brought us together. Dad held her closer. I'll take you there one day and show you where the Whipple family began. His smile faded and the worry crease returned. I won't let you down, India. But you've never let me down, not even close. If there were a best dad competition, you'd win it. Except for keeping you up way past your bedtime. She shrugged. No one's perfect. Dad laughed and gave her one last squeeze. Let's get you into bed. Dad and India tiptoed down the hall as quietly as they could. After Dad kissed her goodnight and went back to his room, Boo appeared at his sister's door. India pulled back the blankets and he snuck in beside her, keeping his voice low. Is it money again? India nodded. He's worried he's let me down. He's never let us down, not even close. That's what I told him. It's always Dad who has to fix things, but I think it's time ingenious India stepped in. You have a plan? Yes, but I'm going to need help to make it happen. India scrambled out of bed and put her jacket over her pajamas. Where are you going? There's someone I have to visit. Not without me, you're not. India shook her head. No way. It's cold outside. It won't be good for you might have another. India couldn't say it. It always scared her when she thought of Boo having another flare-up. Boo wasn't budging. Ingenious India never goes anywhere without brave Boo. But you can't. Please, India. His voice softened. I know you all mean well, but I'm a kid with asthma who is homeschooled and spends most of his time looking out the window at other kids having fun. Please let me come with you. India couldn't refuse Boo's pleading eyes. All right, but on one condition. She rifled through her closet and pulled out her warmest jacket, a wool scarf, and a beanie. You have to wear these. All of them? India nodded. Yes, or the deal's off. Boo dressed quickly. The jacket hung from him like a sack. Ready for action. India melted a little of Boo's broad grin. I know we all might be a little overprotective sometimes, but as your older sister, it's my job to order you around. That's what older sisters are supposed to do, okay? Okay. Now grab your inhaler. We have a cunning plan to carry out. Mailman? The call came from the Wimples' front door a few days later, as Dad sat glumly at the breakfast table. Ordinarily, he'd be out of bed early and in the shower, singing at the top of his off-key voice. But this morning, he hadn't showered or even changed out of his pajamas. He jabbed his spoon at his porridge. Mailman! This time it was shouted even louder. Dad slumped farther into the table, wanting the world to go away. Then the knocking started. Dad pushed back his chair and dragged himself to his feet. He opened the door to see Darryl wearing his mailman uniform and holding a large sack. Morning there, Arnie. Got a delivery for you. What's going on? Indy appeared behind Dad. Hi, Darryl. What are you doing here? Asked Dad. I've got a surprise. Boo wiggled between them. What's going on? Darryl has a surprise, India said. What is it? We're not sure yet. Not sure about what? Nana Flo stuck her head over Dad's shoulders. What Darryl's come to tell us. What's all the noise? Mom squeezed in beside Dad. Hi, Darryl. What are you doing here? He's come to tell us something, India said. Well, why don't you just get on with it, Darryl? Nana Flo said. We can't stand around here all day. Darryl sighed and handed the bulging bag to Dad. This is for you. Dad peeked inside. It was filled with dollar bills and coins. What is it? Money to get you to Sydney. But how? Dad asked. On my mail route, I asked everyone if they'd like to donate to the Wimple Family Spelling Bee Fund, and they were only too happy. And not just the people who owe you money, but those who want to see India become Youngabilla's very own champion speller as well. India could tell Dad was overwhelmed because he bit his lip, trying not to blubber. Thank you, Darryl, he said. Don't thank me. It was India and Boo's ingenious idea. It was? They figured you'd do so much for this town that everybody would want to help you out. Dad looked at India and Boo, his eyes glassy with tears. I have the best kids? Darryl finished his sentence. I think so too. You're a good egg, Darryl, Nana Flo chimed in. Have been ever since you were a boy. She gave him a noisy kiss on the cheek. He blushed. Thanks, Mrs. W. And in that very moment, the Wimple family's worries of not making it to the final disappeared. Boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed these 2 chapters, and I wish you only the best as you read on with excitement. Thank you for having me.